You're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Shane Darby. Today's guest is Joe McDonnell, co-principal at McDonnell Cooper Golf Architects. Many of you may know that Joe and his design partner Sam Cooper have been assisting Formby Golf Club with a number of challenges that they were experiencing with their 7th hole. The improvements that McDonnell Cooper have implemented have bedded in over the course of the winter, and all 18 holes are now back open and in rotation for members to enjoy. Over the course of the next wee while, Joe brings us up to speed on the challenges, issues and opportunities that McDonnell Cooper's creative genius has addressed for the membership at large. We also get a sneak peek at some of the other projects that they are currently engaged with. And finally, Joe brings us on a magical mystery tour around some of the exceptional golf that can be found throughout the northwest of England, an area known as England's Gulf Coast. Many thanks for tuning in. We do hope you enjoy our chat. Joe McDonnell, you're very welcome. I'll do that again. McDonald.
No.
Joe McDonnell, you're very welcome back to the pod for a second visit. How are you?
Very well, thanks Shane. Thanks for having me back.
Not a problem. Always a pleasure to hear your dulcet tones, my friend. How has Royal Liverpool fared over the course of what I suppose is best described as a fairly moist winter period?
Fine. There's been some drainage work done, which has definitely improved some of the sort of extreme water table action that we've been seeing over the last few years. There's been some pooling in very unusual places. And then the sort of remedial drainage work that's taken place appears to have been very successful. So no pooling water, no water in bunkers, just great.
So Mr. Bledge and the boys have been busy.
Very much so. Finding bombs, did you see that?
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
If listeners, I'm sure most listeners have seen it, but I will stick a link to that particular drama in the show notes. But
very amusing.
It's hard to believe it's almost 3 years since your last appearance on the show. And over that intervening period, you have struck out on your own in formalising McDonnell and Cooper, a design partnership with your good friend and fellow clubmate Sam Cooper of Links from the Road and Golf Badgers fame. A starter question for 10, Joseph. You might explain what in your mind differentiates McDonnell and Cooper from other firms operating in the golf architecture space in these islands?
Well, the people. Sam and me, I mean, whilst the individual things that make us up might not be unique, I think the general cocktail of what we bring to the party is a unique combo. Sam is very bright and articulate and thoughtful, extremely fast at picking things up. He's a very quick router of a golf course. He's really speedy at that. It's actually mesmerizing how fast he can put things together. You wouldn't believe it. It's so good. And I'm good with the pictures, I think. So between us, we're quite a strong duo, and it felt like it was time for us to go and give it a proper go. And we'll be forever thankful to CDP for having us on board. And then, we just decided it was time.
Well, I can imagine these past 12 months or so have been exciting and stressful in equal measure as you've endeavoured to build a business and obviously to gain the trust of new clients. How have you found it so far?
Great. Just great, Shane. It is, seriously. I think it's fantastic. Of course, there's pressure of a different kind when it is just you guys on your Todd. But it is also extremely rewarding, satisfying. I think it's worth the risk, the stress. It is stressful. Worth the risk, the stress, the travel, the everything else, because we just love it. We're a pair of complete obsessives, and I would hope that does come through and feels authentic when we speak to people about this stuff, because it's right under our skin. We just live and breathe it.
I suppose when you find something you love and you do that as your job, it probably feels like you never work a day in your life.
That old cliche is honestly totally applicable. I mean, sure, there are times like processes that we have to go through that are extremely tedious and repetitive and all that sort of thing. I was joking with somebody the other day, something I was having to do in a piece of visual software felt like an old punishment you get at school where you had to draw a dot in every square of graph paper, 20,000 dots in this page of A4. And it felt like I was doing that, putting dots on a page. Stuff like that isn't great. It's terrible. In fact, it's mind-numbingly boring, but you know why you're doing it. It's a means to an end. And, the final output is, generally speaking, hopefully, a satisfying one. So yeah.
Jesus, you had some sadistic teachers in your youth.
Yeah. Not quite as bad as my dad's lot, the Christian brothers who were truly...
Well, that would have been the strap or the cane, yeah.
All kinds. Occasional fist, I think.
Yeah. Listen, I'm just wondering how potential clients and customers have tended to engage and how they find out about you. Any recurring themes?
It's a good question about finding out. I think we've been slow to hit the advert button. We've not been pushing the sort of PR thing hard. We've got a website, a rudimentary website, which is a contact form mainly, just because you need one. We need to have a presence digitally, at least for now. But we've been very careful not to go too hard on that too soon because we wanted to complete work. We wanted to have stuff to talk about that we had done rather than what we were doing or planned to do. So as you will very well know, the sales cycles are very slow in this industry. They can take sometimes years to come to fruition. So you can start planning and feel like, okay, we're ready to hit the button, and actually you're not, and it can take months and months and months before you're actually ready to put a spade in the ground or start telling people about things publicly. So I think we're slowly, word of mouth has spread and allowed us to get face to face with people, and just based on that alone, we've been able to tick along nicely to begin with. But I think in time we'll be able to speak more freely about the projects we've been working on and show more of a sort of case study style, assets, if you like. So yeah, it's been word of mouth for now.
Well, the good news for listeners is that you are able to talk about some projects, and we're going to get to those over the course of the next wee while. So the genesis, obviously, for our chat today centred upon a teaser video of the new and improved 7th hole at Formby Golf Club, which I happened across over the past fortnight. Yourself and Sam have, of course, been toiling on improving the hole over the winter just gone. I know you played it for the first time within the past week. I can only assume that as you're here on the other end of the Riverside link, that it wasn't a total disaster. So how was the maiden voyage? And probably of more importance, how had the members reacted to the improvements?
Yes, we're really happy. The first part of your question, how was it, was great. I mean, it's the start of the growing season. It's only just opened and has been growing in this winter. I mean, work finished, was completed at the end of October, I think. So it's barely 6 months it's had. And of course, growing has only just begun in this country. So it's still a bit sandy, and it's, the new turf along the sides of the fairways is coming through slowly. Particularly the native grass will need more time. The sort of chunks have got a lot of sand between them, which needs to fill out. Some of the top lines of the bunkers have got some marram plugs in there, which are sort of binding things together nicely. But yeah, I think it's great. It's very totally playable now. The green is puttable, albeit sandy. But yeah, we're happy. The second part of your question about the members, I don't know yet. We haven't been lynched, but
that's a positive.
Yeah, exactly. Small wins. But I think the members are happy. I think they're happy to have 18 holes back. There were 2 holes out of action because the 8th teeing ground was all completely changed as well. So those 2 holes were taken out of action. I mean, in a lucky way, they sit on their own. 7 and 8 are a pair and they sit out on their own limb. But if it had been a more central hole to the course, it might have been more of a struggle and a difficult sort of routing. But But yeah, we were lucky that we were able to deal with those 2 holes in isolation, really. And the members have been very patient playing 16 holes over the winter.
You know, it's interesting. I first saw the hole back in 2018, I think. And maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but has there been significant tree clearance? Because I seem to remember a lot of pines very, very close to the playing areas on that hole originally.
Do you mean has there been tree clearance as part of this rebuild?
No. Previously, we will get on to what you've done and what was there before and what the challenges were that needed addressing. But I seem to remember just watching the video, and watching a number of videos. Obviously, you've had out over the last week while. And not being able to play the hole in January, and it was there because it was closed. I seem to recall that neck of the golf course being more heavily treed. Am I remembering that right?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of what you're thinking of. I think there's been some foliage management. Things like gorse has been handled, but I don't think trees, certainly not in a great number, have been taken out deliberately. I know there's been a lot of trees that were lost to fire and storms.
Okay.
So, to the right of the 8th hole, on the sort of northern portion of the course's property.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? So as you play down that 8th hole, to the right of there's a huge clearing of trees that used to be completely densely populated. And now
I could well be
open.
getting my holes mixed up. That's always a possibility. So
I mean that is for sure. That hundreds of trees have gone have been cleared from there. It's an incredible land, by the way. I mean, everybody who goes there, your eye can't help but be drawn to the right and go, "Crikey, do you own this land?" Yeah. If you're playing with a member, and they're like, "Oh yeah." It's like, whoa, there's a course waiting to go in there. It's awesome land. But that was all. I was playing with somebody the other day who told me actually what had happened was there were some fires. And beneath the ground had actually, the fires had compromised the root systems of the trees. So they became weak and damaged. And then the storms came in and just completely tore over the hundreds of pines.
Wow.
So they all had to get carted off the property. So that's maybe what you're feeling.
Yeah. So maybe back to the main event on the 7th, you might tell us what was there before your arrival, the challenges and issues that the club needed addressing, and the solutions that you have implemented.
I think coming back to the question you asked earlier about about how do people find out about us, I think one of the great things with this particular project was that Formby had a very immediate need to address, which was this consistent pooling that was taking place on the second portion of fairway of this 7th hole. It was holding a lot of water. Every time there was rain, it had to be roped off because it was just this water was flowing down the steep hill and pooling at the bottom. And also, I think the membership generally accepted that the green was unpinnable, other than to just put it in the middle. So, the increased wear and tear around that sort of central area, coming on and off the green to the same point, it was placing undue stress on the same points of the green every time. And so those two things in tandem were an immediate problem that they needed to solve, which is what they came to us with and said, how would you go about sorting this out? And I think the beauty of that was because it was an immediate thing they needed to do, and they were just ready to pull the trigger and do it in order to be ready for this season. The beauty of that was that it was going to come to fruition, and we were going to be able to play it and talk about it as soon as we are now. Whereas other projects, of course, like we were saying, are slow burners, longer to percolate and that sort of thing. So yeah, the hole as it was actually quite a popular hole, and I think that. It's not that we didn't think it was a good hole. It occupies some incredibly lovely land. I mean, Formby's a great site anyway. It's got that beautiful mix of heather and pine and true lynx land, lovely undulating turf and lots of micro contour going on. But this particular stretch of land is really cool. It's got great movement. It's got that raised green that sits almost in a bowl. It's framed by pines. It's a very, very beautiful setting. But we think the hole itself, whilst quirky and very memorable, had become almost unplayable. If you're trying to roll a green at 10 or 11 on the stimp and you're trying to pin that hole, it's just impossible. If you go long, you found yourself putting off the front and down the hill into that, what we were talking about, that second portion of fairway, which sits very low. So the green was sort of one-dimensional and very difficult to use properly. and then this portion of fairway wasn't working. So actually, having been asked what we would do, we went away and thought about it in a more general fashion across the entire hole, because trying to just change a green and say, do we just take the slope out of that green on its own in isolation? But then we thought, well, that's not really doing the hole justice. It sits on some of the best land they've got. And is it quite doing what it could do with this brilliant land? So we went to, we really took it apart, and we thought, could we think of it from tee to green instead of just being, can we rebuild this green? And actually the result was that we thought, well, we just need to reshape the entire thing. New fairway, it's a new fairway bunker. And one of the key things, actually, this was Sam's idea, was, well, because this bunker on the fairway to the left of the fairway sits on the end of this ridge that bisects the hole in a diagonal fashion, because of the distance that is from the tee, could we make that X size, and then the one beyond it that sits closer to the fairway, can we make that basically double the size? So actually the net effect would be that the one in the near ground would feel the same size as the one in the background, sort of camouflage thing. And it was sort of the idea to discombobulate you on the tee by thinking, hang on, where is that bunker? Is that near to us? Is it far? So just to cause a little bit of pause for thought and confusion on the tee. That was the aim anyway. So we're quite happy with what's happened there. I mean, we weren't going to touch the tee. We couldn't move the tee. So we were like, how can we absolutely maximize the strategy of this hole using some visual trickery, but also expanding the fairway in sensible places, and working out where you could and couldn't see the flag based on the fronting dune that sits at the near right side of the green.
From a green perspective, you've rotated the axis of the green, and it's slightly longer than it was before.
The previous green didn't have an axis. It was pretty much an oval that sat on an extreme tilt. What we've done now is, as you say, is to swivel the green so it does have a long axis, and actually that will follow the same direction of the main ridge that cuts across the hole. The idea being that the sort of further right you go off the tee, you now have a good lie, but you have a very difficult angle in. It's your visibility is impaired. You're playing across a sort of shallower green from that angle. And no doubt you won't be able to see the pin position at all from that right side, but you'll still have a good lie. Whereas over on the left, you get the visibility, you have a better look down the long axis of the green, you have more to play with, you can see the flag, but you are taking on that bunker on that left side, which if you go in, like I did the other day, of course, just for testing purposes, I didn't mean to hit in there, of course. But yeah, if you go in that fairway bunker, you could still have a shot at the green from there. It's about 150. But you need a good lie, and you need to really catch it. So, you're playing with fire if you go on that left side towards that bunker, but you do get the best line in.
Did you hit the green?
I did not. Did you
get it out of the bunker sand. At least?
I did. I made a 5. Yeah, too much sand.
Okay. And you work with a local enough shaper.
That's right, Chris Cardinal. He's really good. We're very impressed with Chris's work. He's a great enthusiast, very upbeat guy, great listener. Yeah, we worked with Chris and we had a lot of back and forth. We actually, with the bunker thing we were talking about, we were sort of using phones as walkie-talkies. It was sort of up a bit, down a bit, Chucker Brothers style. Can you take a bit more out of this? So it was, he was very patient with us, and hopefully he enjoyed working with us. He said as much. So no, we enjoyed working with Chris. He's a good man.
I don't know if these two projects were linked in any way, but from a historical perspective, obviously Formby has evolved from a rudimentary 9-hole course originally through iterations by Willie Park, James Braid and Harry Colt, amongst others. I understand as the 20th century progressed, coastal erosion reared its head and required some significant Donald steel alterations to protect the links from the vicissitudes of Mother Nature. You've been involved in the Lost Holes project at Formby. What can you tell us about that particular process and what you managed to piece together?
I wouldn't take any credit for this sort of thing. I mean, it feels like ancient history, but actually it's really not ancient history at all. I think the frightening thing is that Formby has lost that land so quickly, relatively speaking. It's kind of shocking. It was only the 80s when these new holes were put into play. The erosion wasn't quite as fast as perhaps feared or forecast, but they were certainly right that it was going to happen, because it has, and it's absolutely torn into the land there, such that there are bits of irrigation and piping that stick out of the side of the dune where the old ninth hole used to be. It's pretty shocking. But yeah, the Formby's history is a great one. I mean, the evolution is very cool. They've had lots of change. You can see on the club's bar wall, there's a great old sketch from the era of Willie Park's course. I think pre-cult, so it must have been 25 it is. And you can see these great old angular fairway cuts, these sawn off sort of fairway shapes, very geometric, which look as though they might be a styling of the architect or the draftsman or whatever. But actually, when you do see old photos from that era, you can see these extreme angular cuts of fairway, and you think, Christ, that must have been a really interesting thing to see. I'd love to go back to that. But yeah, those holes out by the coast, I believe this is what happened. It was so an expert came and told them these underwater sort of diversions that have been in place to try and help the flow of the river, or something to do with the shipping industry. I can't remember exactly what it is, but something underwater was diverting the way that the estuary, and the tidal sort of coming in and going was affecting the land there. And over time, what was happening is it was carving land and depositing it elsewhere. So it's losing in one place and gaining in another. So it's changing the shape of that coastline dramatically. And whoever it was, the expert said, you're going to have to think about these holes that you've got that run close to the water. They're problematic, and you're going to lose them at some point. Could be soon. So this is the way I understand it. There was a club member who took this on board and very generously paid for the work to be done to build these new holes.
Wow.
And I think so this was early 80s, and they went to the I think it was the Penink, so it was the Penink Steel and Cotton Company. And I'm not sure if Cotton was still working with them at that time. So it was Frank Penink who put together the plans for these 3 new holes. And I believe during that process he died. And it went to Steele. So Donald Steele took on this project. So those holes are attributed to Donald Steele, but started life as a Penink brainchild. And anyway, yes, they were put into action in the 80s, early 80s. I think did they play them for the amateur championship that it was a Latabal and Montgomery 84 or something? I can't remember. But anyway, so it was early 80s when these holes were put into play. They didn't actually lose the old holes and the land from those until much more recently. It was more like a sort of 2018 when the final hunk of the old ninth green got torn away. But certainly they were right to do what they did. They needed to act. I hope for their sake they've done enough to get far enough away from the bother area, and to actually have, the ninth green is lovely. The ninth hole, that setting, when you look down from the tee and see the pines and the sea beyond. I hope they don't lose that. That's lovely. But I think that, I don't know what the forecasts are, but these storms that we keep getting, these extreme weather patterns, I just don't know whether they've done enough to get away from that sea and from the erosion.
Well, I will put a link in the show notes to a short video that you've created with Sam.
It was actually, it's not Sam. It was the Cookie Jar boys.
Well, I was about to say the Cookie Jar lads. Sam was also there in the video, but yeah, it's attributed to the Cookie Jar and will be attributed to the Cookie Jar. And well done,
Great.
done to Sam and Tom at the Cookie Jar. Anyway,
That's right.
look, we will come back to Formby in a few minutes, but I know that you're involved in a number of other projects, some of which you can talk about and some which you can't talk about, which is perfectly understandable. The good news for listeners is that you are in a position to chat about Dunstable Downs in Bedfordshire, a course with James Braid heritage, the Manchester Golf Club, a Colt-inspired moorland and heathland course set out over the foothills of the Pennines to the northeast of Manchester city centre. And finally, you've picked up a client in the Netherlands, of all places, at Hilversum, somewhere that really impressed me back in 2023. So what can you tell us about these 3 exciting projects?
Dunstable Downs is a really exciting site. It's really incredible. It's spellbinding. You stand on top of this very raised, huge, sprawling sort of site, and you're surrounded on all sides by these endless views. It really is quite an incredible setting. They, as you say, they're a Braid course. James Braid actually rebuilt it in the 30s, and they, like many courses, they they struggled with the clubhouse move. And this wasn't Braid's fault. Braid's routing actually started at the existing clubhouse, which is in a totally different place from where it is today. And when the decision was taken to build a new clubhouse more centrally to the course, the routing changed and was adapted. And actually they find themselves with a closing par 3. So their 18th is this Death and Glory par 3, it's called. And it's a slightly peculiar finish because you get to the clubhouse on the 17th green and then you need to play another hole to complete your 18 loop. So that's a strange quirk, which on its own isn't a bad thing. I mean, there's no reason not to finish on an 18th hole. I mean, Pasatiempo does it quite well. But yeah, it feels like it's a very strange thing to do. And actually, when you dig into the history, you realise that's the legacy of the clubhouse shift. So I think there are quite a few courses that fall into that category where perhaps the routing doesn't do what it might do best had the clubhouse stayed in its original position. Hoylake being one, Port Rush,
Addington being another, starting with the par 3.
Yeah. There you go. The Addington actually is, Brian is in the throes of trying to get the old clubhouse or the original intended clubhouse location into action. So yes, those clubhouse moves have a lot to answer for, I think, when it comes to routing.
So what is the plan at Dunstable Down?
So the plan is, as I say, to address the routing and see if we can, we believe we have come up with what we think is a good solution to their problem, which is how can they get the maximum bang for buck out of their brilliant land that they've got. Yeah. They had, in the early 90s, they had, with the best will in the world, very well-intentioned tree planting on a mass scale. And this is a chalk downland with trees that have no business being there. So the club is working closely with the Chilterns, it's called. It's Chilterns Natural Beauty Society, the Forestry Commission, various others. And the point being that actually the trees that are there now really don't belong. I mean, they've had their ecology report, and of course it corroborates this. The trees they just shouldn't be there. They're causing problems. The agronomy suffers for it. The wind that should sweep across the site doesn't do so in the way that it should. So they've started work already on some tree removal, which has been extremely successful. But that needs to continue. There are many, many trees that need to come out of there. But part and parcel of that is that I should say that their third hole, which they've tried, and I don't want to say failed, but they've tried and probably unsuccessfully, resulted in about 4 or 5 different tees for this long third hole, which plays from a sort of raised teeing area, par 5, into the far corner of the property, but on the left is now bounded by houses, which have been built over the club's, I think it was it's 70s, maybe 60s or 70s, when those houses got closer and closer to the club's boundary. And now with modern equipment, the better players can hit the ball so much further that it's just so in range on the left side for a sort of high hook. So anyway, they've tried and not quite successfully installed all these different tees in different places, facing different ways, different vantage points and everything, and it's not working. So actually our solution has been to redistribute that land in a more intelligent way, and to have the tees facing the right direction for this hole, albeit a slightly shorter version of the hole. So I mean, I can't take you through piece by piece without having a diagram to accompany it. But basically, there was a danger problem on that hole, which we think we've sorted. There are other stylistic things that needed changing. The mowing lines are a bit wrong in places, and some of the greens have lost their shape. Classic stuff. The green pads are there for you to see. You can see the edges of these green pads, and then the mowing lines are, good couple of paces away from these edges. So we're trying to restore some of those things. But yeah, the wholesale stuff that needs changing is that danger element down on the third hole, and some other bits and bobs which I can't talk about without a diagram.
Correct. Well, you do love a diagram and a picture.
I do love a diagram. It's my thing.
So on to Manchester Golf Club, perched above Rochdale in Greater Manchester, Colt-inspired moorland and heathland course. What can you tell us about what you're proposing there?
I can't actually, because we haven't yet got to that stage where we're talking about what we're proposing. We're still in these sort of investigative early days of that job. It's actually only just been signed off, but it's very exciting. It's once again a massive, sprawling site with elevation change, land movement, lots of interest. It's a cult inspired. Where did you get inspired from?
Sorry, cult designed. Beg your pardon.
Cult designed. Yeah.
I'm just reading what I wrote here.
Inspired, designed, same thing. So it is a cult course. They've got, they've got a beautiful site. It's a really great setting. Of course, they've got a few too many trees that perhaps need to come out, but I think that's a given. But yeah, so much potential for that place. Really, really great. I think it's very underplayed. It's kind of underknown in that area. It's obviously not a massively rich place in the country for sort of top level golf, or at least what rankings would have you believe. So I just think there's lots of potential at Manchester. I think it's a really, really cool site. They're lovely people that we've been working with and speaking with. So we're very much looking forward to getting our teeth into that.
On a complete aside, I remember stumbling across some historical newspaper coverage of a historical collection of clubs and other paraphernalia that was basically bequeathed to Manchester Golf Club. Have you come across that in your visits to Manchester Golf Club?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, not yet. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. All sorts of old clubs and balls and various other bits and pieces. Books probably as well.
No, we're looking forward to going down that hole, the history hole. Speaking of which, brings us on to Hilversum. So Hilversum is another cult course, or at least half of it is a cult course. We did an extremely deep dive into the club's history, and we did an analysis, a course analysis, a lot of which was historical, how it's evolved over its nearly 150 year lifespan. But it is a cult course, and I think what the flavour of the challenge there is to try and get back what's been lost of cult, the best of cult, but also try to extend the cult style across to the portion of the course that wasn't actually cult designed. So a sort of consistent thematic, 18 holes across the site, rather than it being sort of two pieces of course. They are actually split. Do you remember the roadway that runs through the course splits? I think it's North and South Holland.
Yeah.
So they're in literal different districts, and the south portion of the course was the area that cult was given to work with. So the club being 9 holes pre-cult, he was then brought in to extend the course down into the southern portion across the road, and he actually built 10 holes on that south portion, which over time the club has evolved and things have been pushed and pulled a bit. But essentially they had a course of 2 halves. And the original course was somebody called Burrows. So Burrows designed the first 9. And there are some really quirky, sort of almost Victorian style holes out on the portion of the course around the clubhouse. Do you remember it, Shane?
Yeah,
well?
I specifically remember the second.
Right.
Which obviously has the split fairway.
Yeah.
That's indelibly available to me to just visualize right now. I actually have the stroke saver with me. So
got it. Okay. They're very memorable, aren't they? There's little bits of those holes that are very memorable, but they're not what you'd call strategic holes. I think that second hole has very little strategy, but it's not unmemorable. So that's the challenge. It's a
very pretty hole, yeah.
There's so much pretty stuff to see at Hilversum. It really is. It's lovely. It's another. True for those who haven't played in Holland. Those Netherlands, I should say. I don't know why we say Holland, but Netherlands. Those who haven't played in Netherlands won't understand just how close it feels to Surrey and UK, England, Heathland. It's really similar, and that particular place has bags of character. So much land movement on certain holes, sort of micro contour, macro in places, elevation change, loads of trees. It's playing down corridors in a lot of places, in chasing distance for big tournaments such as the Dutch Open. Taking tees back into trees creates these chutes, these funnels, and there are a lot of quite straight holes. Very few of the holes actually deviate at all from a straight path. So it can feel as though the holes blend into one and become not memorable. So like the second hole you just talked about, it stands out and stays in the memory because it's very different from the others. It's unusual, and it isn't just playing out of a chute. Whereas I think sort of 6, 7, maybe 8 of the holes feel like they might be, similar. So I think we're trying to find something.
Fantastic piece of land. I seem to remember quite a lot of it's bigger than micro contour. There's actually, but it's not macro contour, if that makes any sense. So
Exactly, somewhere in the middle.
Medium contour. It does a lot of there's a lot going on in the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're trying to rediscover that. I think it's how do I put this? Part of the analysis it wasn't about bashing the course in any way. It's not about saying, well, this isn't right and that's not right. It's not about that. It was about finding out how the course has got to where it is, what it's left with right now, what perhaps it was intended to be and might not be. So it's about diplomatically finding, identifying where there might be weaknesses and why they've occurred, and what perhaps the original intent of the architect could have been. I mean, we'll never know without Colt being on record and standing there with you and explaining it to you, which is never going to happen. But I think knowing his style, his leanings towards strategy in the ground game, and certain other sort of hallmarks of what he thought was good, I think we're just trying to sort of get under the skin of this thing and find out what's been lost and what perhaps was intended in the early days of the sort of 20s layout.
Kyle Phillips did some work relatively recently, which I think the club felt was not in keeping with the direction they wanted to go in ultimately, but it certainly wasn't in keeping with Colt's sensibilities. Would that be fair?
I think so. Again, I have to be a little careful about what I say here, but I think the intention was to that was the sell. I think originally the sell was what you need to do with these holes around the clubhouse is to make them more in keeping with the bit of the course on the south, which is what the sort of course's pedigree leans towards Colt. Of course, everyone, when they discover that they've got something to do with Colt, is going to push that because it's great. Colt's great. What he did was great. But I think actually in the execution, it hasn't quite achieved what perhaps was initially sold to the membership or the committee or whoever's in charge of signing this off. So it's not that the holes are bad. It's just that they aren't quite what I think the essence of the course wants to be, which is Colt. These greens, you see the new greens and you think, well, fine in isolation, but I think they're not a Colt style green. They're not a traditional style green that's sort of propped up with lots of internal contour and other things. Not to say that Colt didn't do these things. I think anybody who comes and says Colt wouldn't have done that, it's like, how do you know? Colt had a very long career across many different types of terrain. He had many different ideas, and I mean, he wasn't quite as bad as Mackenzie for contradicting himself. But I think Colt has had a very long career, and I think you can change your mind with the fashions and styles of the day. And he certainly has worked on different courses that you wouldn't necessarily say that's quintessentially Colt. But I think there are some recurring themes that you can point towards, which is strategic and all those sort of risk and reward style, sliding scales of reward based on how much you take on the danger. All of these sort of classic underpinning evergreen sort of architectural principles, I think, don't go away, and Colt would always try and follow those. But to say Colt would not have done a green like that, I think is something of a bold statement.
No, but also being aware that different types of landforms perhaps require different treatment, as opposed to a cookie cutter sort of approach, which he definitely did.
Precisely that. No, that wasn't his thing. So yeah, I think they've got a few greens that don't quite sit, and I think it's painful when somebody's come and solve a problem has actually left a different type of problem. I think that's sort of what's happened there. Yeah. I'm afraid. Yeah.
And of course, I think you were toiling away up in Southern Ness as well over the past winter too.
That's right. We've got two new holes which are growing in. They decided to seed the holes, so they needed a little longer. It would, if they turf them, they'd probably be ready by now, but it's very expensive. So they seeded the holes, and because they sit in a certain position that doesn't completely disrupt the existing course, they're still able to play the 18 holes as they are, and have these two holes sit in different pieces of land, such that you can still carry on playing your 18 holes whilst they grow. So we're very excited. We're going to be up there, I think, in the next few weeks to go and see how things are going. I think the greens they're happy with the greens. Ali Beggs from the agronomist has been up there checking things out and seems to be happy with how they've taken. So that's good. What else are we doing at Southern S? Yeah, I mean, there's ongoing work. The team, they're a very small team there. Neil and Ronnie, and what they've done is great, and we're really happy. We can't wait to see what people think of those holes when they open. But as I say, they've not been rushing it. They just want it to be just right, and because they've got their 18 holes in play, there's no issue. That's another one Clubhouse problem. Clubhouse shifted, ruined the flow.
Mm.
It really disturbed the flow of how the course feels.
As you know, I relatively recently returned from a nice wee trip over in your neck of the woods, and having first visited England's Gulf Coast back in 2018. Over the past 24 months, been back 3 times. And I hope for this portion of the chat, yourself and the listeners will allow me a little creative license to extend my personal definition of the geographical golfing area known as England's Gulf Coast to include Sylhet, because it's just too good to ignore for the purposes of our discussion today. As an introduction to this section of our chat, you might provide us with a little commentary on what you think makes the land so special for golf as we move from the Wirral in the south northwards towards the Sefton coast and up again towards the very northwest tip of Cumbria.
What makes it good? I mean, what makes it good? I know that the sort of Formby dune system is, if it's not the largest in UK, it certainly is in England. It's just enormous, non-stop, gobsmacking dune system that starts from towards West Lancs and Liverpool City, and then moves northwards and unbroken until you get beyond Birkdale towards Hesketh, Fleetwood. I mean, it really is insane. And of course, now you've got housing and other things on there which break it up. But really, pre-housing and sort of 1800s would have been just this awesome stretch of what we now know as Golfland.
And in fact, there were other golf courses there that no longer exist. Freshways or Freshford or something?
Freshfield, yeah. So that's now RAF Woodvale, which is an RF base over the road from Formby. You can see in the old 40s aerial of Formby that next door, just in the side of the shot, you can still see the corridors of holes from Freshfield, which would have been pretty cool. I think it was quite a well-to-do club. I think it was maybe even better considered in those early years than Formby. And then obviously with the advent of war and things like that, I think RF Woodvale took hold and was just, wiped out the Freshfield club.
You could make an argument, Joe, that England's Gulf Coast is probably the best coastal stretch of golf land in the world.
You could make that argument. I think I find myself increasingly less inclined to get into comparisons, ranks, lists, comparisons. Oh, is it better than this? It's like, I'm sure it's a nice sort of pub talk where you sit down with a pint and you say, I think that's better than that. That's fine. But I think really when you get into comparing Gulf coasts, I think, I don't know. It's, whatever. It's just a bit of a intelligent... I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. I think it's great. I think it really is great. It's inarguable that it is fantastic. And when we find ourselves saying, which do you think is the best course on the northwest coast, and people say Birkdale, others would say Lytham, whatever, you are splitting the tiniest of hairs because all these clubs are just fantastic. They're just
surely
so
the
good.
answer is Hoylake.
Of course it is. Of course it is. You'd have people who's sitting there shouting at the podcast saying, you can't say Hoylake's great because it's got no land movements. And it's like, yeah, fine, but that's because you played it once.
Yeah.
Play it 100 times and tell me you don't like it.
Well, listen, speaking of Hoylake, you were kind enough to host me there a number of years ago. As time has passed and I've played and understood more about golf from the Wirral to the farthest north recesses of Cumbria, it's become clear to me that many, if not all, roads lead to the original of the species, and obviously that is Hoylake. I've recently been dabbling in a little research for my own club at Royal Dublin. The Dublin Golf Club, as it was originally called, was founded some 16 years after the formation of your own beloved course at Hoylake. Both august institutions in Dublin and Hoylake materialised really from what could be best considered as a vacuum, in that prior to their formation, no organised golf had existed in either Dublin or Liverpool. In essence, both clubs were central to the further development of golf in Dublin and Liverpool. So, Paul, just wondering if you can talk about the importance of Hoylake to golf in your part of the world and how it became one of the most important golf clubs over the course of the Victorian period?
I think rather than try and spout all the history that's cluttered in my brain, I think the best thing I could do is point your listeners to the book written by Stephen Proctor, The Long Golden Afternoon, which is a really, really great piece of work. You know, it's not a novel, like a page turner. You sit and go, oh, let's find out what happens next. But it's just a brilliant, well put together book that takes you through the core history of the early days, featuring big characters like Ball and Hilton, and really shining a light on what Hoylake did for the advent of the game, particularly in England. It became a real epicenter for how the game then blossomed across the country, and then by definition the world. It really was the epicenter. So many firsts, and such an incredibly sort of powerful HQ for a long time in those early formative years of golf, particularly in England. So yeah, we're very lucky to be members there. The history is just off the charts. Every year, the club does a better and better job of cataloguing, archiving all its fantastic collection of goodies. I mean, there are medals and cups and paintings and, stories and trinkets and clubs and everything coming out of its ears. It's incredible.
Yeah, I believe Erin is doing a fantastic job there.
Yes, Erin does a brilliant job. And she has been, with the club and the Heritage Committee and the council, have been instrumental in making available a great club tool, which is that you can go online and find by search term and category and tabs and everything else, all of these collections, these items within the club's collection. But also you can rent books from the club. So you can go on there and you can go and find a book from the library, and then you can take it out. And of course you have to go on record so that if it goes missing, they can track it down. But it's a nice sort of formal way of going renting books from the club's library, which is extensive.
Fantastic. Well, listen,
really good.
It won't say you did mention Ball and Hilton, so I'm gonna sort of attempt to ask you a question about that now. On my recent travels around the Northwest, it won't surprise you that those two gentlemen's names kept cropping up. They won a combined 16 major championships between them, and obviously are most associated with Hoylake. However, listeners may be less aware that Harold Hilton was also a member and secretary at West Lancashire when he won the Amateur Championship at St Andrews in 1901. Stephen Reed's fine book charting the early days of golf at Royal Lytham also notes that the two gentlemen, as members, monopolised member board competitions at Lytham between 1893 to 1906, winning a combined 56 major competitions between them. I would say when the Oxford and Cambridge Golfing Society went up to play Lytham, they were probably less than impressed to find Mr. Ball and Hilton playing for the Lytham team. Anyway, I'm just wondering how you would assess the impact that Hilton and Ball had on golf in the Northwest. You're going to refer back to Stephen's book, aren't you?
No, I'm going to cop out of this one in a way. The level to which these guys travelled is just incalculable at a time where it was trains and it was horse and cart. It's just beyond my reckoning. It's crazy. They were up at Dornoch playing, with the opening of Dornoch and sort of as it was becoming better known and becoming this great destination at the end of the world. These guys are up there playing matches and stuff. And it's like, oh my God, getting to Dornoch. They were everywhere. And it reminds me in a sort of weird comparison of how, if you think of the Beatles and the amazing impact they had over such a short, what is comparatively short, let's call it span or career, like less than 10 years together as a group, and what they managed to do in those 10 years, the reinvention, the sort of the reach that they had, and this sort of incredible creativity and the sort of changing of their styles and everything else. You think back to the 1800s, and I think you can compare people like Ball and Hilton and those original guys like C.B. McDonnell, probably a member of about 20 clubs in the UK. I don't know. These early pioneers of the game were so willing to get on a train and go and travel for 3 days to go and play a opening match somewhere that I'm just always flabbergasted by how much they managed to achieve over such a relatively short space of time, considering how long it would take to get you from A to B.
Having spoken about the majesty of the dunescape in the Northwest, Joe, we might take a little tour around the English Gulf Coast with one diversion inland to get a feel for some of the myriad of exceptional golf that is on offer. So first up, I'd like to take a look at West Lancashire, obviously founded in 1893, which is actually co-hosting the Amateur Championship with Royal Liverpool in 2026.
Gee.
I believe on the theme of Hoylke's influence, if you like, 7 pioneering members of Royal Liverpool decided to bring the Scottish national game to their side of the river. And they obviously found at Blundell Sands an ideal location for that. What do you think awaits the Amateur Championship field this coming June? Obviously, the current course iteration, I think, dates from the early 1960s, CK Cotton. Yet it feels less modern than its age would suggest.
Yes, I think it doesn't feel new. It feels like it's been there forever. I suppose it has had 65 years to grow in, but I think it's matured brilliantly. I played it for the first time again just when was it? A few months back, and it was great to see it again. It's a brill course. It's a real test. They're doing some work to it. I know Mackenzie and Ebert have done a sort of bunker plan and a mowing line plan with some suggestions that are larger than others and not just shifting of bunkers. There's been some rebuilding of tees and some shaping, some additional mounding added particularly around 18 and 1. I just think it's a great course. It's a real test. I mean, if anywhere blows stronger than Hoylake, it might be West Lancs. The wind gets going. It really does get going. So if the competitors in the Amateur Championship get any kind of wind down at West Lancs, it'll be a great test. I'm hoping every time the Open rolls around in July, we always hope that they might get a couple of windy days, and it never seems to happen. But I'm hoping in June they do get a bit of wind, because it just makes everything that much more interesting. Ball flight, shape, everything, bit of thought required. You're not just standing and executing the same shot on repeat.
Yeah, Formby Golf Club will just return there for a second. I mean, as I said, I was there in January. In fact, I was back there last month playing the ladies' course. But you know, it's always a joy to turn in off Golf Road, the Dormy House, the ladies' course, Heathland Links mix, the perfect amount of quirk, a sleeping giant, I suspect. But I'm just wondering if there's any appetite or potential for a little bit more McDonnell and Cooper improvement at Formby, or can you not talk about that?
I'm afraid not. We would be, as you can imagine, overjoyed to help the club with more things that they needed sorting or other ideas, but I think we just play that one a little slowly.
Well, our next venue allows us to linger a little longer on site as we take a look at Formby Ladies, which I also included as part of my most recent adventure. On the card, 5,356 yards, par 71, completed in under 2 hours, 20 minutes. Golf needs more of the likes of Formby Ladies.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Very much so. I love Formby Ladies. I've only played it once, and I'm long overdue a return, but every time I walk past it and just see, you know, the shape it's in is just great. Rob Sandilands does a brilliant job there, keeping the course, and the way they maintain the heather should be an example to many courses who are blessed with heather. The way that it's cut and maintained is just so good. It makes it look brilliant, play brilliantly, really intelligent varying of heights of the heather, and the way that it's kept is brilliant. The shape of the course, as you know, it's short, but it's really tough. It's really tough to score. It just eludes, that scoring. You think you can stand up there with a driver and you just get found out so quickly. It's a slap in the face. You need to plot your way around that course quite rightly. And it's not a short course. That's the thing. It's not like, oh, we'll go and play that after a few drinks at the end of the day, because it's just not like that. It's a proper test of golf. And I urge anybody who thinks, oh, I can't hit driver on this course, therefore I'm not going to enjoy it. It's seriously, give your head a wobble. It's a great course.
We were messaging each other a few weeks back, and you floated the idea of a composite course, obviously made up of holes from Formby Golf Club and Formby Ladies. I'm just wondering, is that something the two clubs have ever done, or?
You can't go on record saying that sort of thing. The two clubs definitely have no interest in composite courses.
Okay.
They're very much separate clubs. I think Formby Ladies might be the last remaining ladies club in the country, I think.
Okay.
With no male members. And they like it that way.
Okay.
They're very happy for the two clubs to be separate, although they share the same tract of land and clubhouses are about 50 metres away from each other. They very much are separate entities. And, you are not invited to play from one course to the next. Very much a no-no.
Well, I hope I haven't got you in any hot water there. It wasn't my intention.
No. Disclaimer.
I'm now going to tear us away from the bright lights of Greater Liverpool and for a quick detour down to Cheshire. So if Walton Heath and the Berkshire had a child, then I think the outcome might be just something akin to Delamere Forest Golf Club. Would you agree?
It's a really interesting comparison, I think. Yes. I think Delamere is somewhere that those who've not played it would go and be extremely surprised. Love Delamere. I remember playing it as a kid, growing up in sort of early days, junior matches and things, and it was very much more tree line than it is now. And they took on a load of tree removal, which has restored a lot of the flavour of the course and its heathland feel and aesthetic, and it's just great. I think Delamere is brilliant, and if you can twin it with a stay in Chester, if you're not from the area and need to stay over, I think it would make sense to base yourself in Liverpool and sort of use that to strike out up to the northern Fylde Coast and beyond, or go south to Hoylake and Wallasey and all the other good courses on the Wirral, even to Wales. Liverpool makes sense. But if you can find a way to stay in Chester, which is among the most gorgeous cities you'll ever encounter, Chester with a day at Delamere, maybe play some of the other courses around the area, I think that is just a brilliant golf trip. So lovely.
It's obviously been used as a final qualifying location for the Women's Open in 2026. The Open itself has been held at Royal Lytham. Just wondering how you think the sandy, undulating terrain at Delamere compares to the coastal dunes. Obviously, having first visited Delamere this year, it really is a vital part of the regional offering. It's just something slightly different to that coastal adventure.
Yeah, that's right. I think it is different. It doesn't have the micro contour. It's very much a sort of heathland side, bold contouring, changes in elevation, drop shots, uphill shots, plenty of quirk, and lovely old clubhouse, very charming, lovely start and finish to the course. I just think it works so well. I know if you're going for a sort of links journey into the northwest, then that's what you expect to play. You expect to play Birkdale, Hillside, Formby, Hoylake, Wallasey, that sort of thing. Those are very much classic, quintessential links courses. And to add Delamere to that would be not playing a links course. It's absolutely, unequivocally not a links course. But the feel you have playing it is that inland links, those heathland courses of old. I think you'd come away from Delamere and go, wow, I can't believe I even considered missing that.
Somebody said to me before I went that the greens in Delamere were a bit tame. I didn't find that.
Tame? I was intrigued by people who describe greens as tame. What do you want from a green?
I know
this is a bigger question. Philosophical.
Obviously, it's a big side. There's a rolling contour. So maybe what the person in question was getting at was that it's a fouler. Obviously, maybe some bolder contours are what they were looking for in the green. But I have to say, I found them perfectly acceptable.
The reason I say I'm intrigued by that sort of tame comment is not that it isn't a reasonable observation if tame is meant to mean that it doesn't have big contour. But I am intrigued to know whether people felt as though they came away holing too many putts. Is it too easy? Is that the thing with the tame sort of tag?
I don't know.
Or does it not provide enough of a sort of thought-provoking, I need to bounce it here in order to get it to there, or I need to play it up here in order to finish there? Is that the thing with a sort of tame tag? Because it's a pejorative, isn't it? If somebody calls it a green tame, you can't use tame without it being a negative.
No, look, he's entitled to his opinion.
No, and I'm not. I don't want to get into semantics, but it's an intriguing question because
I'll tell you who it is later on.
Don't have. Okay, send him an angry letter. But I think we have the same at Hoylake. They're relatively flat greens, but it doesn't make putting easy, does it?
No.
I think, yes, you can make putting very difficult if you have a fast running green at, let's say, 11 and you've got all kinds of contour. You just can't get the ball next to the flag. That's kind of Mickey Mouse golf, isn't it? But yeah. I think if you have greens that are subtle, subtle would be the other way of describing a tame green. And I think subtlety can also be a great weapon, because you can catch people off guard, can't you? It's like, oh, there's no movement in this green. It's like, well, did you make every putt you looked at? I don't think you did. So, subtlety, it's just another great little tool that can disarm you, because you think, oh, there's nothing in this green. And then when you come off the course, you think to yourself, Christ, I didn't hole that many putts.
Maybe the person in question needs to invest in a thesaurus.
I'm not going to argue with the person in question if they think it's tame. That's absolutely fine. I would just say there's another way of looking at it.
I'm only joking. and neither of you are wrong.
Okay.
Look, perhaps we get back to the coast and take a brief look at Southport and Ainsdale. You mentioned quirk earlier on. I think there's plenty of quirk in evidence at Southport and Ainsdale. Again, that linksy, heathy feel, impression and release, definitely over the first 7 holes, and a rousing finish. If you had to create a 4-word review for S&A, what 4 words would you use?
This is very personal, but better than I remembered, because last time I played it, which was a good few years ago now, it's about 4 years ago, even though I know that all of the golf offering along that coast is fantastic, I still allowed myself to forget how good S&A is. And coming off that course, I was like, geez, I forgot how great that course is. There's so much good stuff there.
Yeah.
And it's been said a million times, but I think the fact that it sits with such august, illustrious neighbours, I think does it almost a disservice. It's funny, really. It's like the pecking order, the rankings, the whatever else makes it feel as though, well, if we had to miss one, would we miss S&A because it's lower on the rankings? But you're like, oh my God, you go and play S&A, you come off it, you think that's fantastic. If that sat on its own somewhere, people would be like, that's brilliant. It's like Silith's on its own. And of course, that can be a downside, because you don't, as a destination, it's very hard to go, oh, well, we'll go right out on a limb, go and play Silith, and the next course is, miles away. I think S&A benefits from being next door to Hillside and Birkdale and Formby and everything else. But I think also it slightly detracts from S&A, because on its own, it's a shining beacon of quality links, Heathland mix golf, really good golf.
But if you missed S&A, you would miss what I think was probably my favourite hole on the golf course, number 16, also known as Gumblies. Throwback to past times. You might walk us through the options and vistas that are presented to the golfer as they tack along the far end of the golf course, preparing to make the turn for home. It's a wild hole.
It is a wild hole, yeah. The vista, I wouldn't, when I'm playing that hole, I'm not looking at the vista, actually. It's such a fierce thinking hole because of the proximity of the railway.
Bear in mind, the reason I asked that I saw it for the first time a couple of weeks ago. So I had no idea what I was looking at. I had to go up to the top of the hill to figure out what was next. And then I failed.
You have no idea.
I failed.
Yeah. And it's a good hike up that hill, isn't it? You've got to dash ahead, get up to the top of the hill and go, okay, flag's on the left or whatever. You've got to run back to your ball, have a little moment, get your breath back, go and carve it onto the railway and get on.
And I laid the sod over the ball and didn't make the bunker.
Oh, no. What a disappointment. No, it's a great hole. It's a real throwback, that blind final approach over the big heaving bunker, which of course has been through its own evolution over time. I mean, with people expectations, you can't have sand blowing all over the course, but what have we lost in
But once upon a time, I'm assuming that underneath that bunker face that's obviously cut into the hill, that was a big bloody bunker.
Huge bunker. Have you seen the old pictures?
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. It's like a bomb hit it, just this massive, sprawling, irregular blowout bunker sat into the face of the dune. And then, of course, the early pioneering golf course architects, layouters, designers would have seen that as like, oh, ideal. I mean, I think it was it Clates always said, he said a great par 5 is made from having a great short par 4 as the second shot. And I think that would fit into that category, because your second shot on Gumblies is that heroic, take on the bunker, fly it. Or you play short of it, and you take your medicine, you say, I've got to get close to the bunker and then pitch it over. or I go for an absolute hero stroke. It's a great hole. And of course it's a throwback. It's very blind and you wouldn't build it today, I don't think, or most people wouldn't. This sort of lack of popularity for blind shots. I think it's a great shame.
But I would imagine it's one of those ones when you know it's coming up, as you make the turn and you play the par 3 and you keep tacking out around the railway line, you know it's coming. And it's one of those ones, lurking. What am I going to do?
Yeah. Well, it's the great thing is when you're playing down the early holes on hillside, you look into the side and going, if you don't know hillside, you think, when do we get over there?
Yeah.
When does the course take us that? When it's like, no, sorry, different course. Unlucky.
Well, given that you mentioned it, and it is obviously directly over the track the train track from SNA, it would be remiss of me not to ask you for your thoughts on a stalwart of Southport golf. I've not been there since they've made some improvements, as my last play was in 2018. I do remember the back nine being very dramatic, set through some rather imposing dunescapes. How have the improvements sort of bedded in? Have you seen it recently?
You are asking the wrong person. I also haven't been there since 2018. I think it was the British Masters, wasn't it? When went there, and that was my last time on site, and I think that was 2018 as well. So we're both in the same boat. I haven't been back to see the changes, which I think have been very well received. Certainly the photos are very attractive. So yeah, I think it's been a popular update.
Okay, well then literally just down the road from Hillside, we happened across Royal Birkdale, the open venue for 2026. I know Bledge was there recently, and certainly the place looked to be dialed 3 months out from the open. I'm just wondering, have you had an opportunity yet to see the improvements that have been made for the open?
Yes, been back a few times, and she'll be there again in another couple of weeks. What they undertook in the timescales when what they were facing when the Open was going to arrive, I think was so ambitious. It was incredible. Every hole has had in some way some form of work done to it, ranging from a complete new hole, obviously, right through to just all the bunkers being relaid. But the ambition and the effort is just incredible. Sean and team, what they took on, so brave, and they've done an incredible job. So yeah, the course no doubt will be in fine fettle. I'm looking forward to seeing it again in a fortnight or so. Birkdale's a grand day out, isn't it? It's a grand day out. I know you've only played it once, but every time you step on property at Birkdale, it's like, whoa, bold, big, hulking dunes. Test, always a test. Just a grand day out, I think.
And that marvellous Art Deco clubhouse.
Yeah, it's a classic, isn't it? Looks brilliant. Fabulous playing down the last hole and having that as the backdrop. Yeah, unforgettable photos. I love, the site at Birkdale is just extraordinary. And I know they actually put on the social media the other day, they actually referenced the fact that it was a purpose-built championship course, which it is. That was part of its rebuild, the Hawtrey and Taylor rebuild in the early 30s. Well, the remit was to create a championship course. That was the whole thing. I think the funding was all hinged on the fact that they would deliver this championship-ready course, which they've obviously done. And I think part of that is to play between dunes rather than over them. They don't want blind shots. They want everything to be sort of, there it is, come and get us. That's what you're facing. And I think it could be argued that it's the original stadium course. I know it doesn't have steps cut into the dunes, but it's basically the stadium course. It was pre the days of what our American brethren would call bleachers, the sort of stands for people to sit on. So having vantage points like the dunes provided was perfect for tournament golf, for championship golf. And I think whatever it was they were trying to do, they certainly achieved it. It's a brawny test, isn't it?
It is. Look, we've 2 more ports of call before I start asking you a few final questions. We're going to whiz north now up the Fylde Coast, not far as the crow flies, but travelling by car does take you on a circuitous diversion around the Ribble Estuary via Preston. Royal Lytham was a first play again for me this year, and obviously the course is celebrating 100 years since it first held the Open Championship of 1926, won by Robert Tyre Jones. I'm still having nightmares about the volume of bunkers, down 50 or so, I believe, since the course last hosted the Open Championship in 2012. Didn't help that I was playing in 40 to 50 mile an hour winds. Actually, maybe that's 35 to 40 mile an hour winds, I suppose. So I'm just wondering how you would assess the merits of Royal Lytham and St. Anne's, and what sort of challenge do you think that Lytham would present the likes of Nelly Korda, Minji Lee, Charlie Hull, and defending champion New Yamashita when the Women's Open arrives there later this year?
I should be there again in July this year, which I'm very much looking forward to. Last time I was there was, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. I was absolutely knocked out last time I was there by how much the quality of the turf and the general conditioning were improved from the previous time I've been there, which was about 10 years earlier. It was so good. It was playing brilliantly. As you say, the bunkering, it's hard to believe that they've actually reduced the number of bunkers because it feels like they're just everywhere.
They're everywhere.
They are everywhere. I love Lytham. I think it's an absolutely knockout course. Tremendous clubhouse, just so cool. Great finishing hole. There's so much to love about Lytham, and I do hope that we see an Open back there soon. But in the meantime, I'm sure the girls will give it a damn good go. It's, weather depending. If it gets very breezy, it gets really stern. It's quite narrow. I think the fairways have been pinched quite a lot over, of course they have. All the courses have. But I think, the fairways do feel, if there's any wind there, they feel particularly narrow in the summer when the rough's up. But yeah, Lytham's just brilliant. Great finish, really sturdy finish to the course. Of course, starts on a par 3, which is unusual. But yeah, I'd love Lytham. I think, again, if you have to rank things and compare them, I just don't know where I'd put Lytham. I think it's as high as you can get along the coast. I think it might be my favourite, maybe.
Listen, before we move north once again, I must give a shout out to Seamus Martin and the Pro Shop and Tony the Steward for an exceedingly warm welcome that they extended to me. For those that might be interested, Tony's tour of the clubhouse is well worth some time if you have time to spare and you're in Lytham. Anyway, finally, Joseph, artistic license has been firmly engaged. Our final vignette has to be Sillett on Solway in the far northwest of Cumbria. Possibly better paired for golf trip purposes with the delights of Appleby, Dunnerholm and Seascale. I, for some reason, paired it with Formby Golf Club at the beginning of January 2026. It's often called golfing no man's land. What makes the turf and the isolation of Sillett so special to your mind?
Well, I mean, you're putting words in my mouth there. When did I say it? I love Sillett. I think it is another brilliant course. It's over the Solway Firth from Southern S, and as we discussed earlier, we've got these new holes at Southern S growing in right now. It's very hard to pair the two. I think what we miss more than anything is a hovercraft. We need a hovercraft service, and that would sort everything out. I think all those coastal courses should pool together and supply some sort of hovercraft service taking you from course to course, because Sillett would be within relatively easy striking distance from, let's say, Lytham or St Anne's Old Links, and then across to Southern S, which would take you just a quick 10 minutes in your hovercraft, and you could tie them all together. Sillett's just wonderful. It's full of character and charm. It's got that industrial backdrop for some of the holes, which, not to everyone's liking. I mean, you've got something similar at, say, Western Gales or Glasgow Gales, which has the sort of plants behind. And then you've got similar to Seaton Carew, where they have that sort of modern industry, clashes with the oldie worldy links courses. But I think all the more charming for it. Sillett should not be missed. I know it comes up on everybody's sort of first course, which represents the best value for green fee. And I think quite rightly so. It's staggeringly cheap in comparison with some of its neighbours, where green fees have gone completely skyrocketed. But yeah, Sillett is just a gorgeously unforgettable place. I think they've done a little bit of work to the short par 4 on the far side, which is next to the caravan park, because I think they might have been losing a few balls over the fence. So I'd be intrigued to see that next time I'm there. But yeah, I just can't recommend Sillett enough. I think it's just a charming golf links with heather. I think Southern S and Sillett both share that sort of heathery thing. I don't know whether that's to do with the Firth and the way that the seeds have moved down the Firth and sort of proliferated across those sort of pieces of links. But those lovely heathery links courses, just delightful. Similar to, I'm trying to think of other heathery links. You've got Panmure and Formby feel like almost sister, like related courses, true links with lots of heather and pine. But yeah, Silloth and Southern S feel like they're sort of separated at birth in a way across the Firth. Silloth, great course. But get that hovercraft service sorted and everybody be happy.
Amazing. Listen, Joe, before we let you get back to the rest of your Good Friday, I have a few final questions for you to consider.
Okay.
If any listeners are interested in visiting England's Gulf Coast, what advice would you proffer? Places to stay, great places to eat, things to do, and maybe more importantly, courses not to miss. I know you're going to say everywhere, but if time was limited,
I'm not quite sure how I've become the travel agent.
You're the local.
Okay. To stay, I think we mentioned this earlier. I think you'd be mad to miss Delamere and try and tie it in with a stay in Chester and a visit to, proper visit to Chester, because there's so much to see. Gorgeous place. And then Liverpool, since my childhood, and the sort of slightly grotty 80s that Liverpool was suffering through, I think the quality of the town now is just so cool. It's a great city. It's a relatively small city centre, so it means you can walk one side to the other in no time, half an hour from one side to the other on foot. But it's a biggish city because of the suburbs and the sort of sprawling nature of the housing that surrounds it. But I think the centre of Liverpool is brilliant. You can do so much in a short space of time. Strike out from Liverpool and play all of the coast. You can't miss Wallasey these days. Just amazing. We said, I think we're going over well-trodden ground here. Wallasey's brilliant. Hoylake is obviously a charmer. I love it dearly, and I can't be objective in any way about the place.
I can, and I agree with you.
Hoylake and Wallasey, West Lancs, fabulous. Where I think Formby Ladies might be the one that fewest people play and most people should play, and you'd probably describe it as underrated. I think Formby Ladies is a must play. The variety that you've got, in spite of them all being links courses, I think the variety across that stretch within what is relatively short space is amazing. As we've said, S&A to Hillside to Birkdale, they each carry their own sort of character. Obviously, Hillside's dune system on that back nine as it approaches the higher points of Birkdale, that's where they sort of feel like they share some similarities. And then on the lower lying bits of Hillside where they sort of, by the rail tracks and such, they feel as though they share some similarities with some of the holes on S&A. And then as an S&A pushes away from Hillside, it gets its own sort of character. So that sweep, if you were to sort of draw a line that moves away from the southeast across to the northwest of Birkdale, you get that changing character across a very short, like linked dune system. That's cool. Get up to Lytham, get up to St Anne's Old Links. They're all just great. And I think people, if they say which must I play and which could I miss, I'd say honestly, put your finger in the air, roll the dice, and you'll not be displeased with anything.
It's 4 or 5 holidays over the space of a number of years to play everywhere.
It is.
That's great advice.
And also, unless you can find somebody generous enough to help you out with a member's guest fee, I think the green fees have got a little bit tasty, and it's not going to be cheap, I'm afraid.
Well, thank you for that insight. It was very worthwhile. Our second last question this morning is one that I haven't asked for a while. It's named in honour of the first person I asked it to, our mutual friend Angela Moser. So here goes. If I were in a position to wave a magic wand for McDonnell and Cooper, what architectural commission would you most like to get, and why have you chosen it?
What I can't believe is that we spent so much time gassing about travel agent style Northwest Coast stuff and not on this. Yeah. I mean, this is absolutely great question. I think with such a rich sort of linksy coast that
Joe, just to be clear, it doesn't necessarily need to be local. You can choose anywhere.
No. But this is the point. So the fact that we've grown up with so much on offer so close, you'd be surprised to hear that actually what I think would be a really cool dream job with this magic wand that we're waving would be on a piece of land that most people would consider terrible for golf, almost unusable for it. I think that would represent a really interesting challenge. And I think part of it would be to import, let's say, soils, land, and build up the area so that you could almost start from scratch, a complete blank canvas, where you can, use imported soils and sand cap it. Of course, we're not talking about budgets here. Sand is very expensive, and to completely sand cap an 18-hole course is extremely eye-wateringly expensive. But we're waving wands, so we're building up this piece of unremarkable non-golf terrain by, let's say, 2 meters, and then we're capping it with I don't know, half a meter of sand to a meter of sand. So we're turning this whole playground, this sort of clay, into a fully functioning, brilliant micro-contoured course on land that previously would have been just written off as completely useless for golf. So that's my wand. That's what I'm.
This is where all your online doodles that you're posting up come in handy, yeah?
Yeah, that's what I really love. I love is taking unremarkable, like written off stuff and turning it into great golf. That's my dream.
Okay. Finally, Joe, if listeners are looking to augment their golfing libraries, what 2 books would you recommend? And what might readers learn from those choices?
Another good question, which I wish we had more time to wax on, but I'll start with The Prairie Rainer, which is...
you have a copy.
This one here for those. I have a copy in front of me. Chicago Golf Club, written by John Moran and Rand Jerris, Dr. Rand Jerris.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Sorry, just for listeners' benefit, I think you were involved in some of the visuals in the book.
Well, that's but that I think is the gold standard of club histories, and
which is now out of print, though.
Of course it is. It sold in about 2 minutes, and it's won all kinds of awards, quite rightly so. The level of the detail, the presentation, the effort that has gone into this book is just unfathomable. It is the gold standard. Now, I'm not recommending that every club goes and tries to emulate this, because I don't even want to think what it cost. But the presentation is just unparalleled. The quality of the photos, the imagery, the writing, the research. It's got Don Plasek's fabulous hand draw. I think Don Plasek's the best golf cartographer in the world. Just amazing. I mean, really is the gold standard. So, and then I haven't met Rand Jerris. I know John Moran, who's lovely. I haven't met Rand Jerris. He has a PhD. I don't know what it's in, but if it's not in golf, I'll be very surprised. That deserves a doctorate on its own. Incredible piece of work. Sunningdale New Course is my book number 2, which is written by Adrian Pepper, and this is it's called The History of the Sunningdale New Course. And it's a great evolution book. And the reason why I recommend this is because I read it when I first bought it, and I'd only played Sunny New once. And then having sort of gone down a rabbit hole and started researching the course again, I revisited this book, and it became more enlightening. There were some real nuggets in there that made me raise my eyebrows. One in particular was there's an old 1946, I think, 46 aerial that shows the whole course. And in the south portion of the course, most people will probably know that it's been touched by Colt and Simpson over the years. And what I'd forgotten was when I was looking at this aerial, it can be quite confusing trying to piece together which holes are where. And of course, we know there was a period where Simpson was rebuilding some of Colt's work. And I was only reminded by reading this that actually the 2 sets of holes were kept in play for the members to choose which set they wanted to play. So actually Colt's and Simpson's holes could be played at the same time, depending on which you preferred, because I think there was some resistance to this idea that Simpson was coming in, fixing things. I think the main motivator for why he was coming to change the Colt work was because the climb up to, I'm forgetting the routing numbers now, but I think it was the old 9th hole was Heart Attack Hill coming up to the old 10th tee. So that was really, some members found it too difficult. It was too tiring. And of course, this was way pre buggies or any of that sort of thing. So I think that was the main motivation behind changing those holes. But I think some of the members were so keen on the old holes, and they were so obviously able to play them without suffering, they were like, well, just keep the holes in play. So they had these two sets of holes parallel, playable at the same time. And that's why that old aerial is so confusing, because you've got about 6 extra holes, which are just there. So that was fascinating. But as you will have seen, and your listeners will definitely have seen, there's a lot of work going on at the new course at the moment, and Gil Hans has been sort of restoring, renovating, creating lots of stuff. And on the front cover, you've got here you won't see it on the audio only version of this, but you've got the 5th hole of the new course, which that beautiful painting by Harry Roundtree, bucolic scene with this sort of treeless, endless vista across this lovely par 3. And you can see from the recent photos that Gil Hans has reinstated this big sprawling bunker across the front of the hole. And I think it's quite staggering that you can take a hole that is generally regarded as maybe one of the best in the world and make it even better, which is, saying something. So there we are.
Joe McDonnell, it's always a pleasure to chat. Many thanks for taking the time today to update us on your continued success with Sam as McDonnell Cooper, and to shoot the breeze regarding the golfing delights in your doorstep throughout the northwest of England. Remember, folks, visit everywhere. You were long overdue a trip to Dublin, so please ensure you rectify this situation at the earliest possible opportunity. Ham and cheesy.
Lovely stuff, Shane. Thank you very much for having me.
Many thanks for tuning in. If you don't currently follow us on socials, you can do so as follows. On X, you can find us at Firm and Fast Golf. On Instagram, Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. On Blue Sky, if you're that way inclined, the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. On YouTube at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. And indeed finally on Substack at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast occasional newsletter. We favour to ask, if you're still with us, if you're enjoying the show, you might consider giving us a star rating or a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really would be appreciated. Thanks again for listening.